legislation is about protecting all of us from attack or harassment, which is motivated by hostility or prejudice. Unfortunately, prejudice and discrimination is very often born of ignorance and intolerance for people who happen to be different. And at a societal level, this tends to mean the way that individuals from within a majority community may choose to target and victimise others from a minority community whom they perceive as being different. By making provision for enhanced punishments for hate crime, the legislation is intended to ensure equality of worth and equality of opportunity for all of us. There are many people who would take issue with this approach, who would actually question the very concept of hate crime. And you may have come across them. Their argument goes as follows. Surely punishing some crimes more than others just because of who the victim happens to be, or because of what the perpetrator thinks of them, is contrary to natural justice. Doesn't that make some people more protected than others? How is that equal? Surely a murder is a heinous crime, whatever its motivation, and should be punished equally, regardless of whether the victim is gay or straight. Or is a straight person's life now worth less than a gay person's life? It's the crime that matters, not the motivation. Or are we now punishing people for their motives, for their beliefs, for their thoughts? What about my freedom of thought? What about my freedom of speech and my freedom of thought? Surely now I'm being denied my human rights, my freedom of expression in order to protect a minority, just because I don't happen to like them or their way of life. Political correctness really has gotten hold of the criminal justice system. Hate crime really means thought crime. So how do you counter that argument? How do you counter that position? Why should the killing of a black person attract a stiffer sentence than the killing of a white person? Both are hateful crimes, and even if the first is motivated by racial hatred, why should it receive a harsher punishment? The motivation isn't relevant. What proponents of this argument don't accept is that under our hate crime provisions, it's not the motive which is being more harshly punished, but the greater harm that is caused by the crime. Yes, the motivation is important, it's used as a marker, and it's crucial in determining the nature of the crime, whether it was born of hatred or prejudice. However, it is not the motivation itself which attracts a stiffer or an uplift in sentence. Rather, it's recognition that the crime has caused more harm because of the way it was motivated. It's not the offender's thoughts that are being punished, but the greater extent of the harm he or she has caused by their criminal actions. Hate crime does not equal thought crime. So what is the greater harm then? Surely murder victims are equal. The distress and upset caused by the murder is the same, regardless of colour, ethnicity or sexual orientation. Well, no. In his book, Hate Crime in the City, British criminologist Dr. Paul Egansky, he sets out to show that actually hate crimes hurt more. Egansky maintains that the term hate crime is a misnomer and it's an inappropriate label. He doesn't feel that it's necessary to look into the souls and minds of offenders to understand hate crime. He prefers to shift the focus away from the offender and to concentrate on the consequences of the crime and the hurt that's caused by it. Egansky talks about waves of hurt which typify hate crime and which are either much less pronounced or just not present in parallel crimes. At the centre is the individual victim. Clearly, hurt is done to the victim of the crime, and it could be maintained for the victim of a hate crime more so than victim of another crime. Because even when hate crimes don't have a directly physical, violent impact on the victim, they can be profoundly damaging for the person's sense of self-worth and their relationship with others. Being a victim of a hate crime means being targeted for who you intrinsically are, the way you were born, irrespective of anything that you may have done or said. But the hurt doesn't stop there. There's then the harm done to the victim's group or strand within his or her immediate neighbourhood or community. There's evidence to show that people who identify as belonging to the same minority group targeted by the hate crime feel directly affected, not just emotionally, but to the extent of actually changing or altering their behaviour. If it can happen to my neighbour because he's gay, then I'm gay, so it could easily happen to me too. The next wave is the same strand group living further afield, who feel affected by this crime both as a community and as individuals. In other words, if gay people like me can be victims over there, then what's to stop it happening to me over here? Then there are other minority communities who can feel that violence and discrimination visited upon one minority group could quite easily extend to other groups, including theirs. If gay people can be victimised, then what's to stop Asian people being next? And finally, at the societal level, hate crimes strike a blow at social cohesion. They undermine norms, values, and the framework of human rights which we all enjoy and share. So these types of crimes can affect not just individuals but whole communities, creating feelings of depression, isolation, fear, and triggering a withdrawal from social interactions. They can promote a feeling of distrust and hostility between different groups and therefore discourage social cohesion and integration. This then is the hurt, the greater hurt that is caused by hate crime. And when such crimes form part of an organised social movement or an extension of an ideology of hate that permeates entire segments of a society, then the threat to that society is all the greater. This is why we as individuals need to challenge and condemn such behaviour, and collectively, through our government and through our legal institutions, provide for harsher penalties to indicate the intensity of our government and society condemnation of such crimes. Hate crimes can and must be challenged, and as a society we are getting to grips with some of the hard questions that we have to face when we challenge hate crime and deal with it accordingly.
Phone number, which is 0800 077 8460. If you do leave a message on the free phone telephone number, we will ensure that the matter is dealt with confidentially. We will contact you personally. We will only contact the police with your full approval. Our main aim is to support you and to tackle the discrimination you've been experiencing.